Alright, guys, our first story is called The Legend of Loftus Hall, an Irish ghost story. Now, just to be clarification, I didn't write this story on my own, of course, but I took the version from what most people would tell the story from Ireland from the Ghost Adventures episode, and I typed it to where I can read it. So, just to make sure that I won't get copyright claims or take this as my own, I'm just gonna give credit to the person who actually told the story or basically had the story told to him or whatever, or how they started. Anyway, let's get to the video. Long ago in 16th century Ireland, Lord Loftus owned the hall along with his family. One evening, a strange figure came to the shore and saw the hall. He walked up to the door of the home and knocked on it. The Loftus family came to the door and opened to see the man. They left him. They invited him in since they were very generous people. But the daughter of the family, Anne Loftus, fell in love with the man. And even though both didn't know each other, they both had already had affections. They both had affections for one another. One night, while the whole family and the stranger were eating dinner, the man was playing cards with Anne's parents, and as they were doing so, Anne dropped her fork on the floor. As they were continuing to play, Anne went to go grab her fork, and as she was under the table to pick up her fork, she looked and saw that her lover's feet had the feet of Scottish horse hooves. And then after she noticed and came back to the table, the stranger gave an evil smirk and began to stand on top of the table and told her parents that their daughter was nothing but a woman who slept with many men. And guys, I can't say the actual words, so it's for child reasons. So if you're a child watching this video, I'm not going to swear because of parents or whatever watching these videos as well, if you're going to be watching YouTube. So that's just a disclaimer. I'm going by YouTube guidelines. I don't have a personal website for you guys to listen to the uncensored version, but this is the censored version, so be advised. And after he said what he said to the family, he stomped his foot 3 times on the table and laughed evilly as he floated through the room, leaving a hole in the living through the room up in the ceiling with a hole unable to repair. After 9 months after the stranger had left a burning hole in the ceiling, Anne, the daughter, was pregnant with the infant of the stranger. Anne, in fear of her parents finding out, decided to make a hole in the wall and put the baby in there to hide. She put the baby in the hole for many years to come. A few centuries later, a group of investigators went to the exact hall, checked around the house to find any historical findings, and found remains of the dead infant that was once born from Anne. The baby, who has been left on the wall for so many years, died of starvation and dehydration. And since then, the hall was haunted by, quote unquote, the devil and the many spirits that lived in the home that are now trapped to wander the place. And guys, this is a real place. If you don't believe me, you can look up Loftus Hall on Google Maps and look up like documentaries, ghost ventures. If you watch TV shows that have to do with ghost hunting, then you should know about this place. But those who don't know, I suggest you look it up and be mindful of the stuff. And I also just want to say, for all those people that are out there, if you're doing rituals, be careful what you're doing, because one thing could happen, and there's a ton of rituals that you should not be doing. Also, if you're not a believer in the paranormal, that's understandable. I get it. But if you are, then be careful what you wish for. Because sometimes when you wish for something that you want to happen, it won't happen. And then if you don't want it to happen, then it will happen. So just be careful out there, guys. If you're going ghost hunting, ghost investigation, anything. Especially when it comes to demons. before you go to any haunted places that has to deal with demons or ghouls or any kind of other evil spirits, I suggest you talk to a medium or a priest about it before you and get blessed and make sure that you're protected before you go into these investigations. Because from logic, demons feed on your fear, and demons' goals are either make you suffer or to end your life through them possessing you. So be careful. And that's all I have to say. Let's get on to the next story. Hey guys, welcome to the second story. This story is called The Man of the Dread Woods. Now, this story is fictional, but I hope you guys will enjoy it because this story may send shivers down your spine. Anyway, also, sorry about that earlier. My brother is snuggling with a dog. That's why I did this. And also be mindful if my brother coughs, that's because he has asthma and he's a little sick. And my dog, I have a dog now, so I know you guys don't see her, but I don't want to show. But she's on my bed right now, and she's being adorable as can be. But anyway, let's get to the story. It was the year of 1978. I was with my friend on a camping trip near some wooded area. I forgot the name of the place, or what it used to be called, but we always called it the Dreaded Woods. Me and Jack have been best friends since kindergarten, so we have a close relationship. But anyway, we arrived at the camp and began to set up our tents and sleeping bags. It took us an hour to be fully set, and when it was finally complete, my dad told us to go start grabbing firewood before it gets dark. Me and Jack, filled with excitement, decided to go towards the woods and began to grabbing sticks and twigs and anything else we could find as firewood or kindling. And as we were doing so, I heard a whisper in my ear. I stopped and looked at Jack and asked him if he was whispering in my ear. He shook his head no, and that he was near the big tree. And he told me that he was at the big tree. The big tree was a few feet away, at least a good distance away in order for me to hear him. At least a good distance away, because in order for me to hear him, he would have been at least close to me. But I was definitely freaking out once I realized this. But I disregarded it because I thought to myself that maybe I was hallucinating or basically imagining things, because kids at a young age start to imagine weird things, as most kids would. Anyway, me and Jack grabbed a few more sticks. I grabbed a few more sticks, and Jack said that it was time for us to head back because it was getting too dark for us to get lost. So we decided to leave, and we head back to the camp. And we made it to the camp. We gave the firewood and everything we got to our dad. He started to put it in the fire pit and began to light it. And as we were sitting down on our sleeping bags near the campfire, my dad asked us if we wanted s'mores, and we both, of course, said yes, because back then s'mores was a natural snack for us. Anyway, as Dad was getting the materials and the forks for us to roast our marshmallows and get chocolate and everything else ready for the s'mores, I looked into the woods, and as I looked through the woods, I saw a silhouette of a man. And as I looked at it, it vanished before my eyes. I was stunned, and then Jack tugged me on my shoulder and said, "What are you doing?" Asking me what was I doing. I told him that I saw a guy in the woods, and the next thing that I knew, as soon as I saw him, he vanished in front of my eyes. Of course, he laughed, of course, because he was skeptical and thought that I was messing with him or trying to scare him, but I wasn't lying when I told him. But after that, I just kept it to myself because I don't want to start a scene or a ridiculous mess of myself. After our dad finally grabbed the stuff and everything we need to cook s'mores, he started to ask us if we wanted to hear a ghost story. And knowing how we were, and since it was 1978, it was middle of fall, probably around Halloween or so, we both agreed, and he began to tell us a story. And I luckily remember how the story went. He said this, and I quote, "A long time ago, in the early 1800s, there lived a woman by the name of Rachel Batts. Rachel was married to a priest by the name of Father Thomas. The couple came and settled to what we call now as Dread Woods, and here's why it was called that. Even though Rachel and Thomas were in love and married, there was a third person that loved Thomas as well. Her name was Mary Collins. Collins was a local neighbor of Thomas, and had deep relations with him for as long as she could remember. One day before Rachel married Thomas, or basically before they wed, Mary came to confess her love for Thomas, but it turned out to be too late, because she saw Rachel and Thomas together, and seeing Thomas proposing to Rachel made her heart fill with hatred and anger. She left the scene. She left to plan her revenge. On the day of the wedding, a couple of days later, or a whole week later, or so after, the wedding was about to begin. But before the bride and groom were about to kiss, fully ending the wedding, Mary broke into the church and said this to Thomas: "You should have never married that woman, for she is nothing compared to me. This will be your last chance, Thomas. Marry me, or she will suffer," with a threatening tone. Thomas, angered by her presence and how she said her words, said, "Mary, I have never loved you. I loved you only as a friend and nothing more. Me and Rachel deserve each other, and I will have to ask you to leave this church in the name of God and myself, for you have been rude upon the house of God." Mary, filled with rage, left the church before she could open the door. Was about to leave the church, but before she could open the door, she turned around and lifted her finger, pointing at Thomas, saying her final words: "You will be cursed by the power of my hand and my heart and I shall damn you until the day you die." That was, quote, her last words. Then after, she left the church. Thomas, of course, was unfazed by her words, because she figured that she was nothing but a crazy woman. But after the wedding, Thomas and Rachel decided to move near the woods, away from town, because after everything that happened with them and Mary. It took them a couple of 2 months in order to complete their cabin, which they had built somewhere around the area. And after it was built, they began to make it their home. Thomas and Rachel would later have their first child. It was a baby boy. The parents named their son Alan, and as the years went by, Alan grew big and strong, but he lost his mother from yellow fever at the age of 10. Thomas was heartbroken by the loss of his wife and began to drink his pain away by, of course, having alcohol. But every time he would drink, it would result in being very angry and hostile. Angry and hostile towards his son Alan. Then one day, Alan had enough of the abuse from his father and ran away. When Thomas realized the pain that he caused upon Alan, he grew more angry towards himself and his heart felt with regret and grief. His head filled with anger and frustration. And when Thomas realized that the pain that he caused upon Alan grew, after he believed that he was cursed by Mary, and on one winter morning, he finally decided that he had enough with the pain and suffering. So the only way out was to end his life. He grabbed a noose and hung himself on a building, on his own cabin, in the kitchen. Days before anyone knew about his death, Alan came back to see if his father had changed, but to be saddened by the sight of his lifeless body hanging from the kitchen on the noose. Alan felt very, very sympathetic for his father, because he knew that he went through a lot, and decided to cut him down and bury him near his wife on the property. And it's been a few years now, and Thomas's ghost can still be seen in the woods. People described him as if he looked alive, except he was already dead with a rope mark around his neck. Um, and as most people said, that if you see him, it's best just to say that you were sorry to his family in order to let him go at peace. After my dad told this story to both of us, we were beginning to wonder. I was beginning to wonder if the man I saw in the woods was his ghost. But after the ghost story that he told us, we decided to go to some bed because it was getting late and that we had to leave the next morning. So, me and my buddy Jack went to our tent, went to our sleeping bags, and slept in the tent right next to the fire pit. I went to sleep, and as I was sleeping, I began to think and wonder if my dad's story was true. I kept on thinking about the same idea to this day. Anyway, the next morning we began to pack up and head home, and the thought of me seeing Thomas's ghost still remains in my head forever, and I may have to return to that someday to see it for myself. Alright guys, so this is the end of the Man of the Dreaded Woods. Also, like I said before, stay tuned for the small message and announcements for my channel.